There's been a lot of cool stuff announced for Street Fighter 5 today that I kind of want to go over and talk about with everybody. There's like a lot of cool stuff that well, not a lot, but mainly the stuff with V Shift. Like, that's the stuff that I really want to talk about. Because I feel like that's going to dramatically change how we play Street Fighter 5. It's going to be to me it's going to be like a really big turning point for that game. And it kind of sucks because it's like at the tail end of its life. Because after this, we're not getting anything else. Like after Season 5, there's nothing else for Street Fighter 5, like obviously. It'll be interesting to see like how long we have to wait before we hear about Street Fighter 6. Because it's pretty obvious that this season of Street Fighter 5 like wasn't planned. It was like kind of rushed. Like I say rushed, but not really. Like I just mean like it clearly wasn't planned. Like after they made Season 4, it felt like everything was gearing up towards the next Street Fighter game. Instead, we got Street Fighter 5 Season 5. So we're gonna go over basically everything that they talk about, like all the interesting stuff. I don't really care about I mean, this is cool seeing how they get the animations and stuff, but I don't care about that. I really want to know more about Rose and her gameplay. The first person they talk about is Rose, and Rose in this game looks mostly the same, right? She mostly looks like how she always does in every Street Fighter game, but there are some key differences. Like really good, crazy differences. So she keeps like she kind of keeps her medium punch from Street Fighter 4, kind of similar. Animation looks slightly different, but basically the same move, basically the same thing. Which is really good. If it has like kind of the same utility and range as it does in Street Fighter 4, it'll be really good for like shimmies or just a really good like combo tool into Soul Spiral, stuff like that. If it works the same way it does in Street Fighter 4, I don't know. It looks like heavy punch. Pretty interesting that her medium kick looks a little bit different. That's just a natural thing in Street Fighter 5 where normals just don't normally go as they just don't go as far as most other Street Fighter games. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know if I could compare the two right now, but it just looks shorter. Her crouching medium kick just looks shorter than it was in Street Fighter 4. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And I think it's still cancelable, so that makes it good. She still has like really good poking tools from what I can tell. Like a lot of her normals are mostly unchanged from Street Fighter 4. She even has but the thing is though, one thing that I noticed immediately here is that Rose does like her far medium kick in Street Fighter 4, and then immediately afterwards, without moving, she does the close one. Again, it's like this is just reference from Street Fighter 4, but it makes me wonder if this is like a command normal now, or if because I don't think it'll work the same way. I could be wrong. It doesn't look like she really moves anywhere after doing that medium kick. She doesn't really move, right? So either it's a command normal, or I don't know, maybe it could be a different button, I guess, but it just still looks like a command normal to me. One other thing worth noting, I wonder if it'll have like kind of the same properties as it does in Street Fighter 4. Because this is this is one of Rose's best buttons on Wake Up. It led to a lot of, it was just really good. It just had really good frame data, and I wonder if it'll be the same way in Street Fighter 5. It looks like heavy kick, but her heavy kick, she actually does have a close heavy kick. I don't remember what it was in Street Fighter 4. The move she used just now, I think it's a forward heavy kick. I know a lot of people use that in Street Fighter 4. Same thing with their far heavy kick as well. She has a throw. You can tell it's early because there's no sound effects for any of this. So her heavy punch, pretty much the same. It's always been since Alpha. Pretty much nothing really changed about that one. Crouching heavy kick, same. Basically kind of the same thing it's always been. I'm surprised at how much they haven't changed Rose. Like a lot of her stuff, like considering Street Fighter 5 has like this weird mixed bag of characters where with returning characters anyway, where they're like drastically different and play like nothing like they've ever played like, or they just don't change anything. It's like mostly the same. And Rose is in the latter camp, obviously. She has some new stuff though. I think Rose is a really good example of a good returning character. She has a lot of cool new tools while also retaining all of her old stuff. I think it's pretty cool. Slide still looks really good. Probably will still be able to go under projectiles. The fact that Soul Spark can be performed in mid-air is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that you can perform Soul Spark in mid-air. If you can still act out of that and like teleport after, that'd be wild. I don't think that's gonna be the case though, but I mean she'll still be really good, especially with VTrigger 1. But the fact that you can, being able to shoot fireballs in the air gives her crazy screen screen control. That's pretty wild that they gave that to her, especially considering she also has an anti-air. We'll see how good that becomes. But see, Soul Power is an interesting one to me because this is just scream, obviously, right? It just screams like Oki. As soon as you get a knockdown, just put the power right there. And their options are, if they quick get up, then you know they're gonna have to take that setup, or they could probably avoid the setup if they delayed wake up. But at that point, okay, now Rose can do whatever she wants with you. Depending though, because I don't know the range of each of these moves, like of each I don't know how far it can go or how close you can do it closer. I don't know. If you could put one like right in front of her, that'd be like really good. Yeah, it's like the closest we get, I think. I think that's the light one. What makes it really good? Makes it really good. I also like to point out that also makes it really good for again screen control. Because obviously if you're throwing fireballs and you throw out the soul power, they're gonna want to jump, and as soon as they do that, you go right into this. You're right into this, and then you just get a free punish. And if you EX it, you actually get a full combo, I think. Yeah. And they still do not have any. That's so crazy, man. They don't have any sound effects. The tarot cards are interesting because it makes me wonder how many different effects there are. Because that one just gives her VTrigger. I mean, yeah, it gives her VTrigger gauge, which is wild. Considering V shift, by the way. Her V-Skill 1 is going to be a very interesting one to see. It'll be interesting to see how good it actually is. But Soul Satellite is going to be the obvious choice, right? Like, this is just her bread and butter. But the fact that you can Soul Satellite whenever now, on top of having Soul Power, I don't know. How she plays in Street Fighter 4 is honestly how you play most characters in Street Fighter 5. The only difference being is that, obviously, in Street Fighter 4, you don't have crush counters. But Soul Satellite being V-Skill is actually wild. I would have bet money that it would have been a V-Trigger, but okay. She could just Soul Satellite whenever she wants now. So yeah, V-Trigger 1, yeah, this is a teleporting thing. This one, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if it'll probably be some really cool setups with that, especially considering if you pair that up with Soul Satellite, it's gonna be pretty wild. Gonna be some pretty sick setups. Soul Illusion also looks really good. It'll be interesting to see which one people usually go for. But honestly, I could see this going either way. Now, here is where my big brain starts to turn. If you V-Trigger with Soul Illusion and you have V-Skill 2 with the Soul Satellite, do you get multiple Soul Satellites? Or how does that work? Because then Soul Illusion becomes a viable option. And what's really cool about Rose to me right now is all of her options seem really good. Like her V skill, both her V skills seem strong and both her V triggers seem strong. Like I can see anyone running either or and still doing really well. I don't think one is completely useless and the other is just obviously better. That's just that's just what it looks like right now. For all I know, it could turn out that way, but just from looking at this footage, a lot of the Rose stuff looks really good. She just looks like she's just a solid character overall. But that's gonna be interesting, right? That's gonna be some interesting stuff. That's what I'm saying. she's still gonna mostly play like basically the same. She's basically, for what it looks like to me, Rose has like the same game plan that she did in Street Fighter 4, where it's just like she's gonna stay like mid range and she's just gonna poke the shit out of you and just annoy you with fireballs, and then you're gonna try and jump and then you're gonna get smacked with an anti-air or with Soul Satellite. Well, to be fair, actually, you know what though? I was actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Soul Satellite used to be an Ultra in Street Fighter 4. Which means, you know, it had like a bit of an invulnerable startup. So you could do like OS Soul Satellite and get out of some situations, like with at worst like a trade. But you probably won't be able to do that now. It probably has like a bit more startup. So that maybe that's the trade-off. So I don't know. We'll see. Depending on how strong the tarot cards are, I can't imagine I can't imagine Rose players not running Soul Satellite. That's the thing. I can't imagine. Like, I don't know. The tarot cards have to do something really wild to justify not using Soul Satellite, because that's just Rose's bread and butter. Rose looks good. Rose looks really, from what we can tell, and it's obviously early. Like, not the sound effects aren't even there. You know, it's obviously early. But from what we can tell, Rose looks really strong. And I know it's like based on like very small snippets of gameplay, but her kit looks solid. Dan looks the best he's ever been in any Street Fighter game. Like, this is obviously the best iteration of Dan. Because I mean, he's still like a jokey character, but he's actually like made to be like at least somewhat good. I don't know if he'll like destroy, like shake the meta or anything, but he at least looks like he can be competent while also being Dan, which means like he still has some of his more trollier aspects to him. One of the really interesting things out of this is just how many cancels he gets. He can cancel Shoryu. He can cancel certain normals. Like, look at that. Obviously the trade-off is that he doesn't get good range on a lot of his normals or moves. Or not normals, but mainly just on like a lot of his special moves. Like obviously his fireball is like gimped, you know, but I mean, it's still really good. I don't know if he could charge. I don't know if he could charge his Hadouken in this game though. Honestly though, that's probably the one thing that would keep Dan from being really good, is that the fact that like you using your V skill actively benefits the other player, because they also get V skill. And considering he has combos where he uses that V skill to cancel, like it looks like his V skill will be like integral to like some of his B and Bs. You're gonna be constantly giving the other player VTrigger gauge. His VTrigger 1, it's just not that good. It's just not that good. And honestly, the only problem with it is just that it's really slow. Even if you get a knockdown with this move, or if you get like a knockdown and you try and throw it out, like to put it like on top of them for like a wake up, it just doesn't. It just seems like it takes way too long to charge up. But he still has another one that I think is way better than his VTrigger 1, because that basically means he can cancel out of any of his normals. So this is obviously going to be the V skill people run, because his V skill 1 I think is good, but the fact that you keep giving the other person meter is just the biggest detriment. This one's going to be a lot better because for 1, it opens up way better B&Bs to Dan, and for 2, you don't give the other person meter for doing it. At least I don't think so. Unless I'm tripping. Does V skill? I could be wrong. Does both his V skills just give the meter? I don't think so. So like the safest thing to do would be to cancel that into like a fireball or something, right? That would be like a block string, or like at the very least a decent hit confirm. Oh, so it does also increase the V gauge. Oh, okay, never mind. You're fucked either way. Regardless of what you do, you're gonna fill their gauge. So this is the V skill I see most people using, because VTrigger 1 is just, it's way too slow. No one's gonna get hit with that, and even if you do hit somebody with it, I mean, I guess I haven't seen the damage, so maybe the damage would justify it being that slow, but considering it's Dan, I doubt it. So this looks like it'd be just much better, because you could just basically run the same game plan, except now you just do extra damage. So I have to imagine this is what most people would run if they play Dan. This is a very interesting tidbit I like to point out. Let me move my ass out the way. One thing that's very important to point out is that his Koryukin doesn't have invincibility until you pop VTrigger 2. That's interesting to me. It makes you wonder how invincible it is normally, or if it just doesn't have as much invincibility as like other reversal options in the game. I just think this is obviously like the much better option, right? This is obviously the much better option. Like there, as opposed to doing VTrigger 1, I think VTrigger 2 is just way better. The only question I have is can you cancel that super into any other move? I'm gonna assume no. So yeah, Dan looks really good. I mean, not really good, but he looks better than he ever has in any other Street Fighter game. I don't think he'll like redefine the meta of Street Fighter 5 or anything, but I think he'll at least be like a competent character. As far as Street Fighter 5 goes, that's a really good medium kick. That's a very good medium kick as far as Street Fighter 5 goes, because everybody in Street Fighter 5 has like half the limbs that most normal human beings do. So everything just does not. Some characters just have really whack range on some of their normals for whatever reason. I won't ever understand why, but it's just the way it is. But this looks really good. Yeah, see, like the damage he got for that, Dan's VTrigger 1 is only 1 bar. It's literally just 1 bar. Which is kind of like a double-edged sword. The damage you get for it is just not very good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I kind of forgot about this, but you can actually combo after it, which is good. But for Street Fighter 5, for a counter hit, that's whack damage. That's absolutely whack damage. With VTrigger activation, like this person should have took like almost any other character in the game. That would have been like 50%, like easy. Like this would have took like a lot more damage if this were another character, or if he had his other VTrigger. So I just don't know if that's worth it. Also, I think a lot more people will be using their V gauges on V shift. So I think the V gauge just got a humongous significance, a humongous boost in importance in each match, because in Street Fighter 5, I mean, VTrigger doesn't. It doesn't. Not that it doesn't matter. It's just more like the only thing you would really burn your V gauge on outside of VTrigger is like V reversals, and even then, like V reversals are kind of tricky because you can bait them into getting thrown, and it's not really like imperative that you really use your V skill, your VTrigger gauge or whatever outside of just using VTrigger. If you could not V reversal hardly ever in a match in Street Fighter, and you could be fine. I think the point is V reversal has a risk, so some people may be hesitant to use it. That's really all I'm saying. Notice how the other Dan did a combo that required no V trigger whatsoever, and that took more damage than Dan's entire combo. A combo that started off as a counter hit, mind you, and into V-trigger activation took less damage than a regular. Hold on, how did this combo start? I want to say he just got a normal hit. Oh, it started with jump in. Okay, I don't know if that's fair to. Okay, I don't know if that's fair, but the only other thing to point out here is that Dan's V-trigger is full again. Like his V-trigger bar is like full already, so he can do it again if he wants to. So I mean, that's good. If Dan can make you spin that V-trigger bar or the V gauge, if he can make you spin that bar like often because he gets V-trigger off more often, I mean it could happen, I guess, but I just see the first V-trigger just not being used. That's just me. Yeah, I still think Dan's gonna be pretty strong. Like, again, not the best in the game, but I think it's just going to be like a very solid character, actually, as opposed to, and I say this because as opposed to just being just a garbage trash character like most people would expect out of playing Dan. But people do have to pay for him this time, so it would kind of suck if you paid money for a character that's made to be whack. So I personally wouldn't want to pay for a character that's just gimped on purpose. So I'm glad that they're taking steps to keep the character of Dan and still make him like an actual competent character. I think that's cool. Also, I was pointing out he has VTrigger 2 activated. So now for the really important stuff. Like, the character stuff is cool. The character stuff is cool. But this is the most important. This is the most important update in the history of Street Fighter V. I'm not even kidding when I say that. This is literally the most important update. One of the biggest criticisms of Street Fighter V is the wake-up game and just how many times you're put in a position where you just have to guess, where it's just 50-50. You flip the coin and then you guess wrong and then you lose because you just take all the damage, right? On a character like Dan, it's probably, you know, obviously Dan on wake up, I don't think he's gonna do anything too crazy, you know, outside of what most people do, which is probably push their counter crush button. But the fact that now we have the V shift and we see them do it on wake up, and he does it looks like he tries to do like a fireball like in his face, like on his wake up, and he does the V shift into super. This is going to fundamentally change how we play Street Fighter V. This is fundamentally like changing the meta of the game. I really do believe this is that big of a change, because things like when you're put in a situation where you get knocked down, and for example fighting Laura, right? And you have to, she puts out the thunderball or the fireball, whatever you want to call it. She puts out the projectile. She can dash at you and grab you, or she can actually just hit you. So you have to guess between either jumping or blocking. And then after that, I mean, you'll have to probably block the fireball, and then you have to guess again. Now, you can just say fuck that and just V shift. So now it's up to the other player to determine if they want to go for that. It makes the player think about being aggressive. And that is one of the biggest problems that Street Fighter V has had basically since launch. Because there is literally no reason. There's no reason once you get a knockdown not to go for your crush counter or not to go on the offensive. There's no reason. Certain characters can use a DP or reversal option, right? Sure. But here's the thing. If you know they're going to go for a reversal option and you bait that, you get hit really hard. You get hit insanely hard with crush counter. Like, you're taking a smooth 50% damage. Like, with just about any character in the cast, they're going to take like a cool 50% from you. So that's why it's very risky to go for like a wake up DP or something. It's very risky. But with this, with V shift, I've heard it mentioned, I think during the Twitch show or whatever, they mentioned like, you know, they don't want to say it's like a get out of free jail card. The only thing about this that I'm wondering about is how will it affect, what's the counterplay to V shift? I mean, obviously I have to imagine, like, if you know they're going to do it, you could just bait it. You could just bait it. I have to imagine. I could be wrong. I don't know. From what I could tell here, I don't know if you could punish that if you try and wake up with something. Even if you do try and bait it, I don't know if you could. I don't know. Because it's invincible all the way through, and I don't even know what the recovery of it is, but it doesn't look like it's very long. So, for all intents and purposes, this might actually just be a get out of free jail card. That might just be what this is. But obviously, you have to use VTrigger. Well, you have to use the V gauge, and the V gauge is very limited. So like, you don't. And what's going to be interesting about this now, because before you could build VTrigger, you could build your V gauge, right? But it wasn't very important throughout the match to build your VTrigger meter, because once you get hit, you're gonna be building it anyway. But I think now the fact that like certain V skills like help you build that V trigger, I think that those moves are going to become even better, because now you have some characters have manual ways to build their V gauge, which lets them V shift, which lets them get out of those insanely pressuring situations with certain characters in this game. I could talk forever about why I feel like this is a humongous change, and honestly I think it's a really good one too. So here's the other thing, right? When it comes to V reversals, it kind of makes me wonder, like, Like, what's the point of V reversal? Like, you know what I mean? To be fair, I guess you could argue that, like they're saying here, the V reversal can only be activated on block. Now, this is the biggest thing. This is the biggest thing, and there hasn't been a system yet that can be activated freely when the player is getting pressured. This was the biggest reason why Street Fighter V was played the way it was. In games like Street Fighter 4, you had focus attack, you had backdashes. Those things get you out of a lot of pressure in that game. And obviously there's counterplay to those things, but I'm just saying, like, you can't in Street Fighter 4, you can't just mash buttons on their wake up and it work every time, because they can reversal, they can backdash, they can focus attack, they have red focus attack, they have all these options. They have a lot more defensive options in that game. This one, you literally had nothing. You once you get knocked down, it was just you flip the coin. If you jump, hopefully they went for an attack. Hopefully they tried to go for a normal. If they tried to throw, you didn't have a lot of options. That's basically my point. Like, you were either getting grabbed or you were getting smacked with the crush counter on knockdown. That was really your only two options. I mean, I guess, or block. This is huge. I think this is like humongous. Now, and one other thing that's really interesting to me is you can just do it whenever. You can do it just whenever. It's such a good option. I'm so happy they're adding this to the game, because it's such a good option for when you're getting pressured, especially, like I said, on wake up. That's like the biggest thing. But this right here illustrates why this is such a huge thing. Things like jabs, things like staggers, those are all very strong in Street Fighter V. But notice how, because before, if you in Street Fighter V, like right now, if you block something like that, you just block it. I mean, yeah, you just block it. I don't know. There may be something you could do. There may be something some characters can do. I don't know. Actually, since I play Alex, you might be able to parry after that. I'm not sure. But the fact that every character can do that now, the fact that pressure has indirectly been nerfed in like the best possible way, I think that's what's so good about it. Because it's not like they went in and changed how every character like acts and functions, right, to make it so that pressure just isn't as good anymore. They just added a mechanic that made it less good, which I think is a lot better, because it's still, everything still plays the same, but now in Street Fighter V, you have to actually think about when you're aggressive in this game. Because like I said before, you could just be aggressive all day, and there was really no answer. There was really no reason not to. Like I said, like at best, you're getting hit with a reversal. Even if you're baiting a reversal, like if you do get hit, you know, I mean, now you're just back in neutral. But with this, that's going to change. It's going to make it so that certain block strings, you can't just do. Certain staggers you can't just do. Like a lot of stuff is going to change in Street Fighter V. It'll be interesting to see like how that turns out. This is the other thing. That's really intrigues me. I mean, it's like kind of obvious that it works that way, where you can V-shift the V-shift. So like, that's pretty wild. I mean, I don't know if that's the only answer to it though. That's the thing. Or if you just don't V-shift break, like, can you punish it? That's going to be the bigger question. Because then I'll be a little scared if you can't punish it at all. Then I'll be a little scared. I'm like, okay, because now there's no reason not to wake up with V shift, outside of the fact, I guess, like you're using VTrigger. But I mean, again, the reward greatly outweighs the con at that point. Like the pros definitely outweigh the con if you could just get out of free like pressure on wake up with the V shift. So that's it for the Street Fighter V like update and stuff. But all in all, I mean, they're doing really good. I think they're doing a really good job of trying to pull people back into the game and trying to make the game more interesting to play, and trying to appease the competitive side of things that have been complaining about Street Fighter 5 forever. And rightfully so, because like I said, there's things in Street Fighter 5 that are kind of detrimental to its enjoyment. I mean, it's not horrible. Street Fighter 5 is in no means like a bad game. It's not even a bad fighting game. It's just, it can just be a boring one. That's really kind of its worst flaw. So it'll be interesting to see how V-Shift changes all of that.